Welcome to UdjaBank.com, a community service bank.
We in fact believe in individual wealth as against group wealth. We are, in a sense, the only true Americans in America. Black people. We really believe in that stuff. We really believe in individualism. And yet we are the most stereotyped people in the country. We are viewed as stereotypes by other people. We're rarely seen as individuals by other people. And yet we are the most firm believers in individualism. It's a pity. Do your own thing. You do yours and I do mine. Period. Because the reality is all other ethnic groups act in terms of their ethnicity. And the reality is America is a pluralistic society, not a society of individuals. The reality is that there is no individual power without group power. You cannot become an individual ultimately until your group becomes collectively strong. The reason why we see white people as individuals is because of white power. If they had no power and they were powerless, we just see them as a bunch of powerless poor people. You have some people who play tricks on their mind that say, I don't see color. As in, you're not seeing color matters. Because you don't see color means that someone else doesn't see what? That somebody else don't see you as what? Colored. Yeah. So we think if we deny our color and deny ourselves as people of color, that somehow that relaxes the means that the other people don't see us as possessing color. Stupidness. Terrible. And you'll see it almost all the time when a Negro is getting ready to give his money away to white folks or to justify not supporting African people. You'll almost hear that statement invariably. I don't see color. You see? And I recognize that that's exactly the state of mind you have to be in so that other people can pick your pockets. You see? Not seeing color. You can ultimately only gain individual strength through group strength. I talk to college students sometimes by saying, you know, many of you think that you're here at this college, particularly those predominantly white colleges and so forth, because you come from, you know, some big family, because you scored high on the SATs, because you studied hard and you stayed away from the parties and you did all of this. I'm right here at the great university. Lies. You think you're the first person that came from good families? You think you're the first generation that had good families? Black people have had good families from the beginning. You think you're the first generation that studied hard? You think you're the first generation of blacks who can score high on SAT exams? Yet I grew up in a generation of people where it didn't matter how high you could score in the exam, how much you had studied. There were just certain colleges you were not going to, period. Period. That was it. In fact, they didn't even give you the exam to take. Don't bother to apply. How did we get into those schools? Not because of the scores we made and so forth, but because blacks without degrees, the blacks who never see the inside of a college and others, put their bodies on the line because of black power, because of the collective activity of black people. That collective activity then permits you as an individual now to have a choice of colleges. It permits you to choose your profession. It permits you to say, well, I'll be a computer engineer, I'll be this, I'll be that. But remember, that choice is based on what? Group power. And the willingness of the black group to back that right up. It is not a right that is inherent in you as an individual, and it is not a right that was just given to you simply because you were born or simply because you went to the right school.
All right.
And when those people in those universities and other places decide they want to take it back from you, you will have to be that black community again that will stand up and say, no, we forget that often. We got a lot of people now, they got a little position in the world, and they want to make it, they want to say it's all the result of their own individual assets. You see, no, it is group power that makes individual choice possible. Which means then that we try to increase our wealth and power as black people, we then must increase it in terms of increasing the power and wealth of the whole group. Or else, individual power and wealth is a mere illusion. I look at Johnson Publications, for instance, and I look at the difference between that magazine in the 60s and what it is today, and how in many ways it cannot deal with real issues in terms of black folk. And even though he may have millions of dollars, in a way there's a fundamental weakness there. Why? Because he cannot afford to do what? Insult his what? White advertisers. So his wealth is really not what? Howard, as it would be among the others. His wealth, but in a way, his wealth is also his what? His weakness. I, being poor and without anything, can say what I want to. If he had, though, a black nation doing business and creating wealth, he too could say what he wanted to say. Because he'd have that wealth and nation of people supporting what he had to say. But because he must depend upon another people, he cannot afford to insult them. And yet, when you deal with the real issues of black people, you must insult white folk. And so the idea that you can have individual wealth not tied up to the wealth of black people as a group is an illusion of wealth and an illusion of power. And yet many of us have bought into this kind of situation. So we got a lot of us trying to run this little individual game without understanding that it has to be all or none.